I'm horror author Paul Edwards. Today I'm reading Famous Monsters of Filmland, issue 108 from 1974. I thought you might enjoy flipping through this special King Kong issue with me. Together, let's see what kinds of Monster Kid goodness is in here. Famous Monsters of Filmland, issue 108, is a King Kong special photo film book issue. You know, the editor-in-chief, Forrest J. Ackerman, was once asked to list his 5 favorite horror films of all time, and on his list was the original 1933 King Kong. It's also on my list. So he always gave Kong plenty of coverage when he could. So let's see what we get in here. Ooh. Yeah, I know. This cover is a little loose here. Nice. Monthly Fang mail has a few kids that got their picture published by getting their letter to the editor printed. All right, so let's see what we get here. The Kong of Kongs. You asked for it. Well, look at the page gap here. Okay, page 4, page 6, page 50. So this has got to be a huge, huge piece. That's going to be good. Plenty of pictures of Kong. I'm all for it. Whoa. Nice. Well, there's Robert Armstrong playing Carl Denham, the promoter who was responsible for finding and capturing Kong and bringing him to New York City. And we all know how well that ended. Wow. How does this face of Kong compare to the artist's portrait here? This can only be a Basil Gogos painting. He did almost 50 Famous Monsters of Filmland covers. So at the time that they made this film, back in the 1930s, it wasn't known that the Brontosaurus was a plant eater. So it seemed correct to have the Brontosaurus hunting and gobbling up some of the sailors on this expedition when they were on Kong's Island. Which is something we now think that they wouldn't do. I am coming. Expect me soon. King Kong. Gulp. I wonder how much the postage is from Skull Island. Sheesh. King Kong had a lot of good poster art. If you're into vintage movie posters, King Kong is a good one. Partly because they re-released it a number of times. You know, back in the days when not everyone had a TV set, they would re-release older movies. Some popular ones would get re-released every few years. King Kong, Dracula, Frankenstein. They would all get released into the theaters every, 5 to 10 years. So there were a lot of posters. Oh no. Wow. That is actually not King Kong. That is Mighty Joe Young. No, not the rock band. Mighty Joe Young from the 1940s. It was a Willis O'Brien giant ape movie. The same man that brought King Kong and then Son of Kong to life by stop motion animation. Noble Johnson played the warrior chief. gosh. Wow. Detail of painting by FM's late cover artist, Albert Mustel, who recreated the original painting by O'Brien and Crabbe that was the inspiration for the making of the movie King Kong. Wow. Now here, they're telling you the story of the movie, complete with dialogue. So this is really good because, you know, in the days before home video, the closest you could get to watching the movie, if it wasn't being re-released at the moment, was to read along with these printed pictures, and you could read the whole story along. But I'm going to show you something though that's one step better than that, because I knew this was coming. Okay, they did in fact print novelizations of movies back in the old days, just like they do now. And here is an early novelization of King Kong. I read this when I was a little monster kid. Now, unlike a lot of these kinds of books that today, they don't have pictures in them. Sometimes when they novelize a movie nowadays, they'll put pictures from the movie. That's not what you get here. But nonetheless, it's got King Kong. It's the story of the movie. Kids were going to buy it. And I did. All right. Oh my gosh. Wow. Memorabilia that was on Marion C. Cooper's own collection. Wow. Monsters of creation's dawn break loose in our world today. Never before had human eyes beheld an ape the size of a battleship. Nice. This is what really sells the movie, though. Seeing Kong fighting the dinosaur. Okay, so the original plan in the 1933 King Kong was that after Kong shook the sailors off of this log bridge, which was across a big chasm, it showed what happened to the sailors when they fell down to the bottom of the chasm. There were horrible monster spiders down there, and they got the sailors. Well, that was considered too gruesome to put in the finished product, so the footage that they had prepared for that wound up on the cutting room floor and is lost. People would love to find the lost spider pit sequence from King Kong, but it's unlikely we ever will, since we haven't found it by now. Oh, look at all these. I like this. The Saurian stars of King Kong. Stegosaurus, Brontosaurus, Triceratops, Tyrannosaurus Rex, and Kong, the king of them all. When I was a kid, half the appeal of the original King Kong to me was not just Kong himself, but the whole island. The fact that there was a whole island that was a time capsule of prehistoric monstrosities. And one thing I did like in Son of Kong was that they branched out from just strictly dinosaurs and had other kinds of fantastic creatures in it. It's interesting because in the 1976 King Kong, they completely took out the aspect of there being all these dinosaurs on Skull Island. There was just Kong, and they did have one other monster. They had a gigantic snake, but it wasn't, you know, it wasn't an island replete with dinosaurs. Now, Peter Jackson, when he did his 2005 King Kong, he made the island chock full of dinosaurs and monsters. Much more in keeping with the way the 1933 island had been. Latest Wonder movie is technical marvel. Oh my gosh. Yep. One of my favorite sequences in all of fantasy films is Kong's knockdown, drag-out fight against the Tyrannosaurus. This is such a good sequence. Here's the artist's depiction of what he expected the sequence to be like. It's interesting because this sort of a kangaroo jump that the dinosaur is doing, where he's going to kick Kong with both feet, they actually did that more in a schlocky Japanese King Kong movie called King Kong Escapes, where using suitmation, they had a dinosaur like a T-Rex fight against King Kong, and it did repeatedly jump up and give that kangaroo kick to Kong, and it was strong enough to knock him down. But there's nothing wrong with getting knocked down. It's whether you get back up again. And of course, Kong always gets back up again, except when he falls off the Empire State Building, and that's a little much to ask. But in a fight, Kong always gets back up again. Sizing him up. So the publicity materials for King Kong, the original King Kong, described him as a 60-foot ape. Well, when they made the models of King Kong, they did not scale him to be 60 feet tall. They actually had two different ones. They're inconsistent in the movie. One of the King Kong models was scaled to be as if he were 18 feet tall. The other was scaled as if he were 25 feet tall. Still gigantic, but certainly not 60 feet. So the 60 feet reference, it's just in the advertising material. It's not anywhere in the film itself. I don't know why. I think if they had put 25-foot ape, that would have been sales pitch enough. This is a still image from the Lost Spider Pit scene. This is actually a big deal, believe it or not. This picture here is a big deal. This was the first time that a scene, even though it's a still picture, any scene from the Spider Pit sequence had been published to the public. Forrest J. Ackerman dug this up and published it, and that's why he's making a big deal of it with a 2-page spread here. This is it. The censored spider at the bottom of the ravine into which Kong shook most of Denham's men. Yeah. So this was a big deal when it came out in 1974, the fact that Ford had tracked this down. And it is cool. And I'll notice something else. Okay, you get your monster spider, but look, you also get a monster reptile that was down there. Now, when Peter Jackson made his King Kong, he included a spider pit scene, and there were tons of different kinds of creepy crawlies down there. Spiders and other kinds of arthropods, and things like mollusks that swallowed people up. They really went to town with it. Look at that. That's our cover, see? Okay, I know I'm not the first to point this out, but why did the indigenous people on the island go to all the trouble to build this monumental wall to keep their section of the island free from all the dinosaurs and beasts, and then put a door in it big enough for the monsters to come through? And I realize others have asked this before me. I do like the answer that they gave in Kong Skull Island, where the guy who's been stranded on the island for years is asked that question, and he just says dismissively, "Oh, the door's not to keep Kong out. It's to keep the other monsters out." Nice. Oh. Oh my. Gosh. Yeah, Kong didn't know where to begin. Once he got loose and was rampaging through New York, how was he supposed to find Fay Wray in a city of millions? So he was peeking in windows, but it was probably an insurmountable task to him. He was probably like, I gotta look in all these windows till I find her. I wasn't overly wild about Dr. Phibes Rises Again. I know that borders on heresy. I liked the first one better. There, someone had to say it. Blood from the Mummy's Tomb, yeah. All right, now we're into You Axed For It, reader requests. Oh, do you recognize this? I love this film. Werewolf versus Vampire Woman is the English language title of this film. It's one of the Paul Naschy werewolf movies, the Hombre Lobo movies. So he was a Spanish-born fanboy, Jacinto Molina, who, when he was a little boy, he went to see Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman in the theater when it first came out, and it blew his mind. And he went home and immediately started drawing pictures of Frankenstein fighting the Wolfman. He thought it was the best thing he ever saw. In fact, it made him such a fanboy that he grew up to make his own series of werewolf movies inspired by the Lon Chaney Jr. Wolfman movies. And a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them have been dubbed into English and released here. And he plays a werewolf named Valdemar Daninsky, who has a series of escapades terrorizing Europe as a werewolf and fighting against other monsters, usually against vampires or other werewolves. So he's sort of in some of these, he's sort of the anti-hero. He's still a dangerous monster, and he'll still kill you as soon as look at you when he's in Wolfman form. But if another monster comes along, he forgets all about human beings, and his priority is to kill the other monster. So he's sort of accidentally on our side when there's a multiple monster lineup in one of his movies. And in this one, he was trying to stop the vampire woman here, Countess Wandessa, from conjuring the powers of hell. So we were rooting for the Wolfman just by default. That was a really good one. They also almost exactly remade this story a few years later, and the English language title of that one is Return of the Wolfman from 1980. It's a very, very similar Paul Naschy werewolf movie. Roman Polanski. Look, I'm going on and on about Paul Naschy, and I'm like just passively, in passing, just saying, oh yeah, Roman Polanski, one of the great directors. That is not a comment on him as a person. Just I'm talking about his skill as a director. He's a truly great director. Battle for the Planet of the Apes was the 5th Planet of the Apes feature film. Yep. By now this was a well-oiled machine. They had it all down with the ape costumes and everything. You can tell Forrest J. Ackerman wrote this. Behind the simian scenes. Yep. So Planet of the Apes is one of these franchises where a casual viewer probably has the general idea of it, but you really have to be a diehard fan to fully follow the continuity, because there was a big time travel jump between the second and third movie, and then they showed how the ape society developed in the near future to become what it was in the first movie. Does that make sense? So the diehard fans know their place in the continuity with each movie, but if you're a casual viewer, you're like, all right, what's happening here? The apes, have they not taken over yet? There's all your Planet of the Apes goodies too. This was a big franchise. Big franchise right up until Star Wars came out. This was the franchise that they had models, action figures, color forms, picture books, you know, anything that they could slap Planet of the Apes image onto, they would sell you. There was actually a Planet of the Apes flashlight, and it just had Planet of the Apes written on it, and they were selling that to kids. I mean, kids were just gobbling it up. Anything that had Planet of the Apes brand on it, they were buying. Until Star Wars came out, and then everyone forgot all about Planet of the Apes. Shouldn't your Dracula kite burst into flames when you fly it in the daytime? You know, sunshine should incinerate it. Just asking. Horrific undead skeletons. Okay, before the movies with Johnny Depp, Pirates of the Caribbean started out as a Disney property. There was no movie or TV show for it. It was just a Disney intellectual property, and they had these models for it. It was basically a bunch of pirates in spooky sea settings. They were pirate skeletons doing different things. Ooh, spook show. Superhero hobby kits. Notice that they have both DC Comics and Marvel Comics superheroes in here. All right, it's time to send away for your home movies. You get a reel of film from one of your favorite fantasy films. And they were, oh, actually, I was about to say what I say often in these ads. They were only about 12 minutes or so of each movie. But this ad is a little different, because here they're sending you 4 reels for each feature. They are sending you the whole movie, but it's in multiple reels, just like it gets shipped to the movie theater. Well, yeah, that's pretty good. And here's your projector to show it on. A monster-sized collection of books on horror and sci-fi films. I'm not sure. James Bond doesn't really count as horror or sci-fi. I'm not sure how that's in here. Tarzan isn't really horror or sci-fi, but it does have a lot of fantasy elements. You know, he's forever running into lost civilizations and so forth. So I can see that. But Bond, no. Not unless you count the 79 Moonraker, and even that hadn't come out yet when this magazine came out. So. All right. Some of you told me in a recent video comment section that you had, somebody told me that they had every single one of these, which I'm very impressed by. Very impressed. I own the Godzilla one, but it's not in very good condition at all. It's missing a claw and everything, but I do own it. But to have all of these, wow, that is impressive. Remember these really early Star Trek books? They were short stories. They were collections of short Star Trek stories. And each book would have, I don't know exactly, but let's say maybe 4 short Star Trek stories in them. I had several of these, not all of them, but a few. And I had, as I've said in other videos, I had almost all of these prehistoric scenes that with the interlocking bases so you can make a whole huge diorama. But I never got the crown jewel of the collection, which was the Tyrannosaurus. Never got the Tyrannosaurus. I did have the Allosaurus. That was close. But the Tyrannosaurus was like 20 bucks. And in 1970s money for a kid, that was a lot. You can order your matching monster head and hands and feet. Oh, great. Mego. Those figures are really good. Nowadays, if they were going to make a figure like this, they would just mold it, in plastic, and the clothing would be part of the plastic mold. Well, these were figures sort of like dolls, where there were cloth clothes that they put onto a molded plastic figure. They were really good. Horror film soundtracks. So when you're down in the playroom of your house playing monsters, you can listen to spooky music to go with it. Oh, all right. This is worth looking at a little closer. So this is a quiz, okay? They're going to give you the names of monster movies, and you try to figure out what animal name goes with it. And here's the list you have to choose from. For example, the deadly what? Well, there's 2 choices that could be. That could be the deadly mantis, or there could be the deadly bees. But I don't think the deadly bees had come out yet. I think that might have been later in the 70s. No, I'm wrong. The deadly bees, there it is. I was thinking they were going to say it was the deadly mantis with what's his name, Hopper in it. All right. The black, that's got to be scorpion. No, I'm wrong again. Ha! It's the black cat. Well, Black Scorpion is a real film. All right, now I got to redeem myself. I've gotten 2 of them wrong in front of you now, in front of my audience. I can't be doing that. Let's try another one. The blank, a Hitchcock film. Okay, that has to be The Birds. What other horror film did Hitchcock do that has... yeah, there it is, The Birds. The Blank Woman, that's the Leech Woman. That one I know. The Giant... You got to narrow that down. That could be a number of things. Let's see. The Giant Gila Monster. There it is. Curse of the... And that could be a lot of things. Faceless Man. That's not an animal. Cat People. That's not here. Curse of the... Do you see it? Curse of the Fly. I got it. It took me forever. Curse of the Fly. That was the third of the Fly movies. All right. I'm not doing as good as I thought I would here. Let's see if I can redeem myself. The Killer Blank. The Killer Shrews, of course. Yep. Tarzan and the Blank Woman. I'm not as up on my Tarzan as I should be. I would say I would answer all the other ones and see what was left. That's what I would do. Horror of Blank Island, Spider Island. That's easy. The War Blank. War what? Can you see it? Eagles? The War Eagles? That's a guess. I don't actually know. The Blank people, that's the mole people, I'm sure. The Devil Blank. The Devil Bat with Bela Lugosi. The Hound of the Baskervilles. And Curse of the Cat People, of course. Oh, see? We'll see. Curse of the, and then Curse of the. So I'm giving myself a point back on that one. How did you do? If you did better than me, let me know in the comments. Feel free to humiliate me. I deserve it. Oh, Monsters of the Month. Monster, W.C. Fields. He was a famous comedian, movie comedian. Aren't you a little old to be smoking? Oh, this is the American Cancer Society, I see. All right. Yeah, you wouldn't believe, if you're young enough that you were not around in the 70s, you would have been horrified how many kids smoked in the 1970s. This is stuck and I don't want to rip it by prying it apart, so let's just look at it this way. The Phantom is alive and well in FM, Famous Monsters. And then the same publishing house had other magazines out, so they're plugging those. All right, that was an excellent spread on King Kong. King Kong, as you may know, is my favorite monster. I am going to show you another King Kong goodie. When I was a monster kid in the 1970s, they mass-produced a ton of wire King Kong figures that were bendable and posable. Here's one of them. You can see Kong is holding the blonde, which probably is Fay Wray's character and Darrow, but you never know. It might not be, because there were other King Kong movies by the time they made this. King Kong Escapes also had a blonde heroine in it that Kong picked up. And these were so ubiquitous when I was a kid that I actually have another one. Yep. That's right. Maybe one of them is Mechani-Kong from King Kong Escapes, and they could have a fight. Or maybe one of them is King Kong 1933, and one of them is King Kong 1976, and the two could have a fight. I'm pretty sure these were hand-painted, because look at the difference in the paint jobs. Especially here, this is real sloppy on the head with the white. This one's better. But yep, there you go. So there's some bonus King Kong content for you. Listen, if you enjoy classic monsters and vintage horror, check out my book series, the Mourners Woods books. And I'm saying it slow because the AI that puts captions on these never gets the word mourners. M-O-U-R-N-E-R-S apostrophe, because it's the possessive. You got that, AI? Mourners Woods books. They're for sale on Amazon. I'm a self-published author, and I've written a series of novels that take place in a haunted forest. Each has different monsters and a completely new cast of characters entering this forbidden domain. I recapture the vibe and feel of 20th century B movies. I put a link to my books in the description for all of my videos, so you can follow that down below if you're interested. My name again is Paul Edwards. My books are the Mourner's Woods books. Thanks for spending some time with me looking through the special photo film book issue of Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine. I'll see you in Mourner's Woods.